wording. Words. Shells are really good. Really love shells. Shells are great for crabs and nuts. Nuts love shells. Shells are real
Sweet.
good.
Here we are.
All right.
Hello, and welcome to episode 37 of the Foam News Collective podcast. I'm KT. I'm here with Grim. I'm here with Vile. What's up, y'all? How you doing today?
Good.
What's up?
Good to have you back on the pod, Grim.
Yeah.
As we all enjoy the heat here. How's everybody surviving?
I had hail, actually.
It's
it was
funny,
91
I
degrees, and we had hail.
I say that, and we had thunderstorms yesterday, so today is not the hottest day for us at all.
Yeah, yesterday was weirdly, again, like 91 degrees, pouring rain, and hail. In the desert, mind you. I'm in the desert. I live in the desert, and we had hail. I don't know. Anyways, it's weird.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the fire and brimstone.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's been hot enough that it's gotten hot enough in the house that for a good, longer than a week, I haven't been able to sleep very well, and I've been heat sick constantly.
Oh God. That sucks.
It's getting a little better. The AC is actually... It decided it wanted to keep up with the heat for once again. So now it's actually cool in the basement for the first time in ages. I'm like, now you decide to start working again. All right, I see how it is. Took you a whole, all of last summer, it didn't work at all. And now it's just all right, we're cool. We're going to work again.
Oh
and I'm just
now,
cool.
Now that
I guess I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Better late than never.
Well, we are here with a very special guest, I think our third returning podcast guest.
That sounds about right. Third or fourth.
Something like that. Yeah, let's see. It was because we've had Not Enough more than once. We've had
Boomstick more than once.
Yes. I'm going to embarrass myself continuing to try to remember who's been on more than once, but really excited to have Sillybutts back. Sillybutts, how are you doing?
Hello. Doing pretty good.
We finally got to meet you, me, and Vile at Maryland Mayhem. That was a super great time.
That was great.
You gave me a single silly shell, and I could not find it for this silly shell announcement news story, and I still haven't found it. I don't know where it went. It's rolling around in my stuff somewhere.
Oh, I can send you a few more. I have close to 50 at this point for all the test prints and crap.
I figure you probably have a few.
Yeah.
At this point. What how have you been since then? What you been up to?
I've been doing pretty good. I've been working on prototypes and development and crap like that, as is cool. And since then I have released both Silly Shells and Wild Style, which is the shell pistol that uses silly shells, and I've been working on some silly shell based projects and some other smaller projects. I've also released a custom Picatinny faux scope. It was a fun little
that's
project.
right, the scope. Yeah, I remember we did that as a short an episode or two ago. That was pretty cool. It's cool to have, even if it's something that lots of people have done big faux scopes, but it's cool to have one that's your own. And if you're building a Sillybutts blaster, to be able to put the Sillybutts scope on it.
Yeah. Yep. It was a fun little project. Fun little toss together. Yeah, I liked it.
Well,
sometimes you need to hone your mind, get creative juices flowing. And little side projects like that are good for that.
Yeah, low stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Low stakes. You don't have to get all the functionality right. You're just making it because it looks cool.
Exactly.
But on that, I do want to dig in on silly shells a little bit. We've had a variety of shell standards, and particularly in the realm of multi-ammo type shell standards, the what's the shotgun called?
Throwback. There's the
the one before. The one that's actually
Spring
available.
Thunder. Yeah, Spring Thunder.
Spring Thunder.
Yeah.
So the Spring Thunder has kind of been the hobby standard for a while, and before that, people made modified trilogy shells and slingfire shells attempting to fire different types of ammo.
Sledge fire.
And
Sledge fire.
Yeah.
Sledge fire, sorry.
There's also been like the Kieran shells
Fly
and then the
point.
Firefly shells and then
Fly
Fly
right,
point,
but
yeah.
but those
and
are all
also
pretty much
shells are like long time in the homemade as well. But
Yes.
even
Yeah.
before 3D printing, like far.
There's
with
like the
shells.
FAR. That was what I was gonna say. That's like the first thing that comes to mind as like hobby shell
Mhm.
blaster.
Well, so I'm curious what led you to decide it was time to make a new standard and to make your own standard and sort of like what sets Silly Shells in your mind as the designer apart from some of the other standards?
Yeah, sure. The genesis of Silly Shells kind of came from being, I guess you could call it disillusioned, but being dissatisfied with Spring Thunder shells as a standard whenever I tried to design around them. And this is sort of the same way that the Cynthia bolt action blaster came into being, with being dissatisfied with the Indra. Just kind of looking at the currently available thing and being like, I could either spend time to fix it or work around the issues with it, or I can make a brand new thing that fixes all those issues for everybody else to use. So I went with that. And
what were some of the issues that you had with Spring Thunder shells?
Well, the main one that kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of needing to go and make my own standard was they don't work in magazines very well, box magazines. Because Spring Thunder shells all have a protruding rim outside the silhouette of the body of the shell, if you want to call it that. The piece that holds the dart itself. The rim sticks out past the edges of that. So if you have multiple shells on top of each other, you get rim lock, which is when the pointy-outy bits of the rims lock into each other, kind of like grabbing each other, and then you can't feed them out of magazines. They just jam up. And also, the way that Spring Thunder shells are just shaped doesn't work very well in box magazines. They're a little bit too long. Or the proportion between length and width is a little bit wonky, I found. And they kind of tend to tilt, bind up if you try to do them in a box. And basically, the start of the Silly Shells was I made a magazine for Spring Thunder shells, and it almost worked well, but I just couldn't get it across the finish line. So I said, okay, I'm going to put pen to paper, and I'm going to make a shell that is better for this and better for all other things that shells currently do. And I kind of went piece by piece down the roster of what you want a shell to do, and I made each bit better, as better as I could. And then worked on that for like a year and a half or 2 years, and now we have it now.
Wow, so that's been going on for quite a while. I mean, I know some of your designs. Would you say that's like obviously building a shell ecosystem is different from designing a blaster. But do you feel like that's sort of average for how long you kind of go from concept to functional project, or is that longer or shorter?
Kind of. It really does depend on each individual project. I think that 2 years is a little bit long in terms of like my development cycles, but a lot of that was generally when I have an idea, I work on it for a few months, then I set it aside, and then I write notes about what can be improved and all that stuff while I work on other things. And then I come back to it later and finish it up, beta test it, release it. So 2 years from the start of working on it to release is not a continuous 2 years of development. Or not a continuous 2 years of constant, like, main focus development. They were like every month I would do a small little thing to the shell or write down a new thing. But it's really 2 main hotbeds of development, one at the beginning, then a break, then pushing it over the finish line. And Silly Shells taking 2 years, I think that's pretty maybe that's a little bit over my average. I think about like something like Cynthia or Alchemist or the Slab. I think Slab is a little bit faster than average, but Alchemist and Cynthia both took about a year and a half in terms of development. Then also there's usually a first prototype that I make, and then I throw it out completely and redo the entire design. That's a very important part of the design process, is making something that doesn't work at all and having to start from scratch.
I think that's true of a lot of creative processes.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta fail first.
Now, having a break in the middle of your development period isn't like, people do it. I just I never see anyone actually have it kind of almost down to, on average, this is what happens when they design something. Would you say that has been a benefit in the way of potentially avoiding burnout or looking at things at a new angle to fix issues you had with it previously when you set it down?
Oh, definitely. 100%. It really helps quite a bit with burnout. I do still get a little bit of burnout from time to time, just working on... Sometimes there's a project that you don't necessarily want to work on right now, but it's like 99% done, and you should really get it over that finish line so stuff that is time-based can start getting done. So, for example, I have 2 projects right now that are almost ready for beta testing, but they're not quite there yet. They need like a week of work each, and then they could be into beta testing. But as soon as you start beta testing, a timer starts. Beta testing usually takes 2 or 3 months, assuming that everything goes mostly well. And then hardware kits go out, and then stuff is released. But as soon as beta testing starts, people start posting them and talking about them. You need to kind of catch that hype train before it leaves the station. Yep. And kind of getting that timing right is very important. But also making sure that you're not getting burnt out by working on one of those super important projects is kind of difficult, but also important. So, for example, instead of working on those 2 projects right now, I have been working on more blasters that use silly shells, which is probably not the best idea, but that's how I'm holding it together right now.
Well, you know, I mean, you talk about, because part of what you're talking about is the sort of social media attention ramp, where it's like you could put a million years into designing the coolest blaster that's ever existed, and if people don't see it on Instagram and YouTube and Discord, it may as well not exist. Aside from, I mean, it's valid and great to just make things for yourself. But if the goal is for it to go out in the community and improve people's lives and play experiences, you're not achieving that. And so you wind up having to play some degree of the same game that I think YouTube creators have to play a lot of the time, where it's like, well, like, you know, you want to hit the right beats when you release things. And I mean, in that context, maybe it does make a lot of sense for you to be doing silly shell blasters right now, because you just put the shells out, and the more that you can kind of support it, the more people will see it.
Well, it's also because there's 2 things I want to touch on. First of all is I do focus on individual blasters as they are like in the public mind, but because I work on so many different blasters that are drastically different from each other at the same time, it kind of gets hard to pick and choose which to focus attention to, because I have, I don't know, over 100 incomplete projects, probably reaching 200 or 300 at this point. I just have a big ol' list of projects that I put each thing in an individual folder to keep track of development, and I can just leave and come back to it at any time, and all of the stuff that I need to see is still right there waiting for me, so I can jump right back into the project. But having that many, and also sharing stuff as it's being developed, because I talk about all of my things very publicly. I share developmental photos and videos, talk about stuff on podcasts, and doing all of that kind of leaves people, I think, kind of wishing that certain things would get done when they're not even remotely on my radar. So I have a flintlock musket project that needs to get done eventually, but I haven't worked on it in like 8 months.
I vaguely remember that.
I remember that.
And it was like, I post about that, nothing but that, for like 2 months, and people really excited for it. And then I set it aside and I let it cook for like 8 months, and no one remembers it.
So when you getting the silly musket down, huh? When's that happening?
Yeah.
So I'm hearing a lot of the same problems that I come with all my weird builds and stuff that I'm the same way, because you weirdly can dedicate so much time. It's like you're so hyper focused on this one project. But then you put it down, kind of like you said, burnout or whatever, or maybe you something sparks an interest of like, oh, wait a minute, I could use this on this other build. And you go to another one and you put it down. And then, the moment you put it down, either people get mad that you put it down or they forget about it. And it's like, I'm hearing all the same problems. I know of all these problems.
It's just so many. Because especially with blaster designs, people get really excited and really like invested in like their person in a specific project, because it's not just going and buying a new fancy thing, it's going and buying a new fancy thing and being able to customize it and do things with it and play with it and share it with your friends and make your friends some of them too, and etc etc etc. And it's kind of hard to kind of put a damper on that and then have them come back to it just as excited months and months later. It just doesn't really work out that way. And that's kind of something I need to do a bit better with as a designer.
It's challenging. It's challenging. Yeah. I know that we've been talking for a while with Poppy, the creator of Tulip, which the files were just released last week. And
yes, very interesting looking blaster.
I am by now anyone listening to this knows that I own one, because I bought one of the beta units from them, and it's really cool. I like it a lot. But one of the things was they messaged me and they were like, "Oh yeah, I'm like about to release the files," and we talked for a minute, and I encouraged them to be like, "Let's wait and put this on the next episode, because you really want everything to be there when it launches. You really don't want you definitely don't want us to do a story that says this is coming out in 2 days. Because if we do that and a few thousand people see that, they are all going to forget about it in 2 days, because they're going to be thinking about the other thing that they were able to click the link on to go look at."
Exactly.
So hopefully right now a bunch of people are looking at Tulip that haven't seen it before, because that data and information was immediately available, and timing those things, and sort of like, how do you balance having like the community involvement that you want with the right people who sort of inspire you to go further and might offer suggestions that you need, and people that you trust to do beta testing, but also keep it sort of on the down low enough that it's a surprise when it's like there for a lot of people to just like generate that excitement around it.
Yeah, it's really difficult
balance.
Yep. I mean, I've been doing that for a few years now. Kind of timing releases all in one big chunk instead of piecemeal. So files and YouTube videos and reviews and news coverage, if it's available, all kind of hit all at once, a big old wall of attention grabbing stuff. But it's really hard to kind of make it work at this point, because the popularity of my designs has kind of grown to a point where, in order to get that sort of like gut punch of excitedness from the community, it kind of needs to be bigger than the last time. So I'm messaging more people and sending out more things, all that stuff. It's a lot to keep track of when there's 80 designs that need to be released.
Yeah. Now, I asked earlier, I had said that taking a break in the middle of your design process, if it was helpful. Now, I'm kind of curious, have there been any particular notable examples that you can remember of times that taking a break in the middle of a project, when you came back, either it was to its detriment or you forgot what you were trying to do in the project? Like you lost your train of thought of where you were going with something. And then had to get put aside.
That's good. But it's almost as if you're an introvert.
It's almost like we've done 36 episodes of this.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah.
It's real good. Let me think. Because because of course the thing is with those kind of projects, you forget about them.
Exactly. I'm
so
asking you to try and remember something you've forgotten
maybe go
about.
through that.
A little
Go
bit
through
of a
that
tough
archive.
problem.
Maybe they go through that archive of abandoned projects
there are
that you released.
probably like 100 things that fit that description, or at least 50. Let's go with 50.
Okay.
But I think that one that would kind of one that kind of ties into the subject matter that we're broadly discussing of silly shells is one project I had was a modern recreation of the fast action rifle, which is a old NIC homemade that was shell fed, PVC pipe, wood, wood screws, kind of old school PVC homemade. I think it's about as old as me. I think it's 2006 or something like that. Really old blaster. And I wanted to make a 3D printed version. Got really far into it, did a lot of work on it. But then I kind of got distracted, and instead of kind of letting it sit and do nothing, generally when a design project dies on the grapevine, at least for me, it's not because I forget about it and go and do something completely different. It's because I was working on it and I go, this is cool. I wonder what would happen if I made a version that did this other thing that's mostly the same but slightly different. And I go work on that instead. And then the first thing just kind of dies.
So it inspires a different piece of work then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that homemade version of the fast action rifle was using the original style of shells, which was PVC and wood kind of pointed into a cone with an extraction ring on the back. And I had 3D modeled something vaguely similar based off of pictures. And I said, well, I can go work on the Spring Thunder thing, the Spring Thunder mag-fed shell project. And I went and worked on that instead. And I was like, oh, this is mostly the same as the fast action rifle in terms of like feeling and general handling. Let's just do this instead. And I went and did that. And it got pretty far along, and I hit some trouble. And then I said, oh, I'll just go and make my own shell to make this better. And I kind of left that completely behind and went and made shells. And then now we have shells. But those two things are just dead. No way that I'm going to come back to them. I'm not going to make a mag-fed Spring Thunder, and I'm not going to make a fast-action rifle that uses silly shells, because that's just a whole new blaster.
But they were also such a clear part of the process that got you to silly shells, right?
Right.
Like in a sense, they live on just as a conceptual part of how you wound up at this new thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I imagine that you're hoping for wider adoption on this. What are your kind of goals for the growth of the platform? I know that a few people already have blasters that work with them. There's a couple examples that we talked about on the release episode,
like the Yeet Hammer by Spire, SPYR. I think they actually pronounce it Spear.
I think it's Spear makes.
Yeah. So that thing, really good. JE is working on a version of his booster blaster, which is sort of like a Night Finder, but with 2 plunger tubes, 2 triggers. It's a side-by-side double-barrel Night Finder type thing, rainbow pistol. He has a version of that is using silly shells now as well, with a break action barrel. And a bunch of people have been messaging me about making kits for existing blasters. Someone's working on one for the Fate rival blaster. Someone's working on one for the Dart Zone Ranger, which is the...
I love kits for the Fate. I love
thing.
changing the Fate so that it shoots other things. Speaking of projects that never
that is one of my favorite blasters to work with.
Look, I will get to it. I promise I will get. It's only been like a year and a half, and I'll get to that project.
Other people have been working on... I think that someone made a boomdozer cylinder that uses silly shells, which is really cool.
That's sick. That's really neat.
What else? Someone made a modification for the Busby Berserker, which is that giant, like, green monster with, like, 18 darts in a cylinder.
I love that.
Air blaster. I think that they have a version of that uses silly shells.
Yeah.
And then I've been working on stuff for the Knockout and for the Pilot that uses silly shells. But that's kind of the goal, is to, use silly shells in all the blasters, because they're good.
Well, let's. One of the things that I really loved about Wild Style, and we got to see it at Mayhem, is that it's a single shot pistol, but the shell is just kind of on there at the end, but it ejects the shell, which is so much fun. I love that something like that does that. What it seems like the kind of design that's almost like it's a really cool design on its own, but in a sense, it's also sort of like a proof of concept. Like it's kind of the like minimum viable blaster.
Oh, it definitely was
for shooting a shell.
It feels like the kind of thing you would have seen out of like one of Blaster Face's, like, oh, here's what we were working at, like Kite and Rocket.
Right? Yeah. Here is our prototype barrel break with a Maverick grip on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
From Nerf Haven.
What's your goal? What's your like sort of ideal blaster? Because I know the whole idea was that it was like mag feedable.
Yes. Yep.
What's your sort of ideal blaster to fire silly shells?
Well, Wild Style was a minimum viable product. It was literally a pistol that I threw together in like 2 days, start to finish. The grip, modeling from scratch, the plunger system, the plunger rod, deep hole, the Picatinny rail, all that crap, done in 2 days. Printed and everything, and tested. And then I sent it off to a few people just to, have other people test FPS ranges for silly shells, because it's not all going to be the same if I do it all on my printer, because there's tons of different variances in printers and tolerancing and ability of people to assemble stuff as well. Some people are going to, glue O-rings badly, so you need to take that into account. I ran into that a lot on the slab. But Wild Style was a minimum viable product. And then Boomstick Mods and one other person, I think someone on YouTube, both said basically at the same time, hey, you should add shell ejection to this. And I was like, but this is like supposed to be the most basic thing possible to kind of send out and do things with. Because originally it didn't have shell ejection. You just grabbed the shell and yanked it out of the shell carriage, the thing that holds the shell to fire. I had like a little finger divot on the bottom and just kind of popped it up. So I added a lever to it, made the whole thing generally less crappy. Because if it's a minimum viable product, for yourself, for your own testing, you don't really put as much thought into it as, a final polish design. So it took a few months to polish it to final release state. But yeah, and then I released it. Now people are enjoying it and telling me that's best thing since sliced bread. And it's like I put it together in 2 days plus a month of polishing or whatever. But yeah, so Wild Style is released now, and that's the minimum viable product. That is if you want to think of silly shells as an ecosystem, my own corner of the ecosystem. So silly blasters that use silly shells is its own piece of the Venn diagram. Then you have the whole Venn diagram, big circle, is silly shells as a whole, with other creators making their own things for the silly shells. My own silly shell blasters, in that mini ecosystem, Wild Style would be the equivalent to like a Night Finder or a Jolt. It's the most basic thing for silly shells. And then I'm working on a bunch of other blasters to fill other kind of pockets in a lineup. So this is kind of my first project series, I guess you want to call it, where I'm doing things sort of like a big toy company, where I have made a new line of things that all have similarities, and I'm kind of filling each individual use case with a blaster for that new thing, for that shell. So, for instance, Wild Style is the Jolt or the Night Finder of this line. But I also have a revolver, revolving pistol. I have a blaster that's sort of similar to the Roto Fury, so like a pump action revolver. I have 3 different tube magazine fed pump action shotguns. One with the tube magazine above the barrel, one with the tube magazine going back into the stock, so it's like a bullpup tube magazine.
Oh,
and I have one that's in a traditional setup, sort of like a Spring Thunder or a Sobek.
Right.
And then I have 2 different magazine-fed silly shell blasters as well, because one of the first things I did was when I was designing the shells was I designed a magazine to go with them, because that's the whole purpose of the shell, or the main purpose of the shell, is to have a magazine that uses them. So I made a magazine that uses them, and then I'm building blasters around that, as opposed to the other way around. So the first blaster that uses a magazine actually uses that magazine as an internal magazine. So it does not detach from the blaster. It's sort of like an Ultra 3 or a Magnus. Kind of load the shells in through the top, then they pop out, but you cannot remove the magazine. And then I have a separate blaster that does have a detachable magazine. But I'm kind of doing it in this sort of kind of doing tons of different designs at the same time, but they're all different functionalities, just because it's easier to do it this way. If I make a change to one of them, the internals are similar enough where I can just add that change to all of them at once.
All the different designs can benefit from each other.
Exactly.
As you're
so if I
working on them.
improve, the extraction on one of them, all of them have improved extraction now. So it's a lot easier to do it kind of now rather than later. And also, doing it like this lets me kind of pick and choose the quickest design to release first. And because this is one of the things I was going to mention previously when we were talking about coming back to projects after kind of making them public, and then letting them sit for a while, and then coming back to them. If you do that, other people might not wait for it to release and go and make their own version. So if I have, a silly shell as a system is released now, people are going to want a pump action shotgun that uses them because that's their purpose. If I don't finish mine in time, someone else is going to take that thunder. Spring thunder. Someone's going to take that thunder and kind of run with it. So I'm trying to kind of beat other people making something for my own system. And part of that kind of race to the golden trophy is doing tons of different pump action shotgun designs at once, sharing internals between all of them, and then choosing whichever one is the quickest to get to release, which in this case, I think is going to be the internal magazine shotgun. Because if you kind of go blaster by blaster, if you are doing a tube magazine, right? So they're all the shells are lined up in a big old line down a tube with a spring pushing them backwards or forwards into a lifter mechanism to feed them into a breech. You need to deal with sourcing those longer plunger tubes. Plunger tube material, the same stuff used in Caliburn, is the material for the tube magazines on silly shells. That's part of the design for them, is that they are sized the same as a plunger, so the printed piece of a plunger for a blaster. They fit in the clear plunger tube materials. You can have clear magazine tubes, which is neat. But part of finishing a blaster that uses that first would be you need to source that longer tube. So all the shops need to add a new SKU for that new tube. They need to get their cutting jigs set up and all that stuff. They need to get springs in. I'm currently using foam blast drum springs in both of these designs because both of the shops that I mainly sell through, Silver Fox and Out of Darts, already have those on hand. But you need to kind of prepare for that because I don't think that that's a very large volume item for them. I haven't asked them, but they don't usually include
a lot of
4
people
of those in each hardware kit.
A lot of people looking for that stuff are just ordering it and cutting it.
Exactly.
Ordering the material and cutting it, which is not necessarily viable for every every potential user.
And then also tube magazine blasters. There are a lot of mechanical issues. They're really, really hard to work out. And that's why stuff like the Sobek has taken 20 years to release or whatever the heck it is.
Right.
See
the Busby monorail for more information.
Right. Yeah. Stuff like that. Like lifters are just really, really hard to make work correctly. So instead of spending the time on making a lifter work, I'm just not using a lifter. I'm going to work on a different project while I let my brain kind of stew on how to make a lifter not suck. And I got a prototype of a lifter already done and it sucked. So instead of spending time doing that, I still need to make the race to the pump action shotgun blaster of some type. I'm gonna go work on something else that's easier.
That's taking that break to reset, like we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
And that makes so much sense.
So now I'm working on pump action blaster that uses magazine, right? Because that's easier than using a lifter.
Yeah.
But then the issue with that is, okay, I have made a blaster with a detachable box magazine. I have now set a standard for a box magazine. I really need to make sure that that's good because people are going to print a bunch of magazines. If they all need to reprint their magazines, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
So that takes a long time as well. So instead of doing that, I'm working on an internal box magazine blaster where you don't need to worry about the magazine catch location and how the feed lips are shaped and all that stuff before other people start designing around them.
Right.
No one's going to design around this. This is just for this one blaster.
Right.
Yes. So just that one blaster needs that one thing. Much easier to design. Don't need to work on the ancillary stuff.
And then you have the internals of the magazine, the spring and all that stuff worked out really effectively, and now you can tackle the external aspects of a removable magazine.
Well, I actually did that first. Project. I made the magazine first, and then I built the blaster around it.
Well, yeah, and I've seen some of your magazine prototypes too, and it's really cool. But I just mean in terms of like actually having a thing that you're putting out in the world that you're comfortable
Of course,
with,
yes.
like you said. Makes a lot of sense.
That's also the reason why one of the reasons why Silly Shells took so long to release was they've been done for like 6 months prior to release. But it's just making sure that you do not need to change them for any reason.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
So you just kind of ran through that, like with a lot of your projects now, if you're designing something that could be a standard for something, you're kind of in the position now where there is an actual reality of that being an adoption. Like if you make a magazine for this new shell platform, a bunch of people adopt that design. So that can completely kind of change someone's thought process of like, oh, if I want to design this, you can't always be so you can't be fast and loose about it. Yeah. When would you say that thought process or realization of, hey, I need to be actually like think about this kind of stuff in this kind of way happened? Or when did that change occur, would you say?
Oh boy. I think that's kind of hard to place down like a specific point. But it was okay. I think I do know actually. It was sometime after the Cynthia release. Or sometime during the Cynthia release. So for people that don't know it, Cynthia is my bolt action blaster, and it has a glued plunger tube. Plunger tube glues to a piece, which is then connected to the bolt action handle thing. The first time that kind of really sat down and focused on setting a standard was during that project. When I made the piece that is glued to the plunger tube, I didn't want to make a piece that would only work in Cynthia, because before I became a designer, or I should say in my early days of being a designer, I was reusing hardware between blasters. I was like tearing down my Talon Claw to build some random thing I designed, and having plunger tubes easily accessible that I could just use, that were correctly sized and didn't have anything glued to them, was helpful. So if someone in the future needs a glued plunger tube, I don't want it to be on a printed piece that is not replaceable, glued, that doesn't fit their thing. So I spent a lot of time making sure that that glued piece for the plunger tube on that Cynthia blaster was good enough for other people to use. And it kind of turned out to be mostly okay. The glue surface on that piece isn't quite as much as it probably should be. The plunger tubes can kind of break off over time because it's only about 1 centimeter of glue surface between the printed piece and the plunger tube itself.
But you've created an object that you think is useful in other designs.
Yes. And then I've also focused on that quite a bit in this current pump action shotgun, because all of them are going to have similar sized plunger tubes, and all of them are going to have glued pieces at the front again. It's basically the same system as a Cynthia. So I have made a new printed piece for all those plunger tubes to share between all of those different blasters. So if someone wanted to go from the internal magazine blaster to make the tube magazine blaster, and they want to sort their own hardware, they don't need to buy a whole new plunger tube. They can just swap the piece, and the printed piece will be the same between them. and it's also made to be more durable with that in mind. Bigger glue surface, more walls, more material, better screw placement, stuff like that. Heat set inserts.
Right.
So yeah, that's part of that.
I could ask you questions about this forever, but we have to move on because we're not the only people who get to ask you questions about this.
Yes.
And we need to go through their questions as well. If you are, checking this podcast out for the first time, you might not already know that we have a Ko-Fi where you can support the Foam News Collective with as little as do we actually have a minimum? There's a suggested $5.
The suggested is $5. There is no necessarily.
There isn't
minimum,
actually a minimum. Currently, if you back us for anything, you get to ask a question of our podcast guests. That we may grandfather some people in here and raise that quantity at some point because the questions may become a bit of a flood. But for right now, you back us, you get to ask our podcast guest questions. There's some other perks. There's a backroom thing in the Discord and stuff like that, and some other things that you can do to mess with the show. But we do have a few questions for Sillybutts from a few of our backers. And the first one from Colin Blank of Go Slow Taco. How do you foresee your YouTube channel? Is it more of a small platform to share your progress, or is it something that you'd like to grow and make it a bigger aspect of the Sillybutts brand?
I'd definitely like to grow it. I've over the past year, I've kind of leaned more into that, kind of getting a more consistent video upload schedule, taking time with thumbnails, putting like hashtags and links in the description, stuff like that. I would like to grow it. It also, it takes a lot of time to edit videos and stuff like that, as opposed to just recording stuff and then immediately posting.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So, I would like to grow it, but I don't really want to spend more time on growing it. I kind of want it to just do its own thing.
At what point are you growing your YouTube channel at the expense of the work that you actually intended to do?
Yeah. And then, I don't really want to get someone else to edit videos for me, because that feels like a big jump from me as a guy making things to a team of people under me working on things, and then to keep track of that too. Sounds like a big pain. Yep. So I'm kind of happy with the organic growth that's been getting right now. I'm up to, I think, 3,000 subscribers. Pretty nice. I like it.
It's great.
Numbers are good. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Want it to be bigger. Don't want to spend more time on it. So it's kind of just, shooting at the hip, doing whatever I can on it. Kind of not caring much about it and just letting things happen. But
hashtag relatable. Emilio asks, your designs generally utilize readily available. You talked about this a little bit. Usually, bleh. I shouldn't have interrupted myself. Your designs generally utilize readily available hobby hardware, and your designs are designed to be printable across a wide gamut of printers. Both things are greatly appreciated, but are there any hardware components or design production methods you'd utilize if you were to design a blaster without such restrictions? In other words, what would a silly blaster look like without budget or technology limitations?
Yes, please. That would be great. I've spent weeks at a time removing an aluminum bar from a design to make it $5 cheaper or $2 cheaper. I have spent so much time shaving costs down without reducing the quality of the final blaster. Dovetails and crap like that. But if I didn't have to do that, that would be great. Aluminum bars everywhere, tons of SLS prints, tons of custom machined pieces. So many problems could be solved by machining a piece out of metal, but that costs money, and money is expensive. So I don't do that. I don't know. There's so many designs where space constraint, you can't really do it with printed pieces with it being strong enough. For example, the catch on a zinc, that needs to have a machined metal piece for it to work the way that it does, as the plunger catch notch. Can't really do that out of printed materials. Misplaced Moose has made a blaster of similar layout that does have a printed piece as that, but not to say that that's bad. I think that's really good, really smart design. I just kind of like metal because metal is fancy. and I want that, but that costs money, so
Yes.
I haven't made one of those. But also, custom aluminum bars for individual designs instead of having to work around Caliburn and Talon Claw and blasters like that. Bars having brand new standards for the bars with different slots or holes or stuff like that in them. Really nice. What else? SLS prints are really nice.
On the custom bar note, and I don't want to just make this a gushing about Tulip podcast, but I have it in my hand here. So, they had a custom bar length on it, and so they came up with a printable bar.
Yep.
That can
That's
fill
what I
into
used
that
to
slot.
do.
Yeah. It seems like a great solution, and also the printable bars that they sent with mine say "I Heart Comic Sans" on them.
Nice, perfect.
Printed in multi-layer color. It's pretty clever.
That's what I used to do earlier in my design career. Like I would working on something like a mini claw U, which is a shortened tongue claw with a 65mm prime, so like half of a normal tongue claw that had super short channels on it. So I made printed U channels, and then people started using those for normal tongue claws. And then that gave birth to low hardware tongue claw, which is a fully printed one. So, that kind of led to that. But like going in the complete opposite direction from trying to shave hardware off of something and going hardware heavy and just solving all the problems with hardware. Really cool. Like, I don't know, what else? Having barrel, instead of using a barrel collet to keep it in place, using like an over-center flippy lever, like Eli Wu used on the Andromeda B-Car. Having that on a blaster, so nice. But like, hardware costs money, and SLS also costs money. Then as well, like SLS parts are hardware at that point. Each one needs to be, or one of each of those parts needs to be included in the kit because people don't own an SLS printer at home. It's officially hardware. Then you need to deal with sourcing it. Stock crap. But yeah, SLS, custom aluminum bars, machined pieces. That's about it. Also, longer screws would be nice. None of the shops really have super long screws in stock. I want like M3x60.
Do you ever think you would consider doing a project like that? Maybe just like an all-out, kitted-out version of whatever your like favorite design of the moment is, just as like a vanity project. Like if someone really wants to put the money into it, it exists and it's tested. And it's out there.
Thought about it. I've thought about it. At one point, I made I fully modeled but never actually built a fully machined Talon Claw version of the original Caliburn, or the original V1 Caliburn, I should say. The machined Caliburn made of polycarb. I made that out of a Talon Claw, or that Talon Claw sized with like a modern sear and all that stuff to make it not feel like crap. But something like that, tons of money into it, that would be awesome. But in terms of like printed designs, kind of blinging them up, can't really do that. Just the way that things are designed, it would be like a whole new thing. Unless like you did something like the Venturi and just added fancy side panels on them made out of metal. That would work. But like, you're not gonna put like metal bearings on an Alchemist because it's nicer. Because that would through the barrel. But you could get a steel barrel, but then that's heavier. So it's not necessarily better because it costs more.
So what I'm hearing is
a linear rail weighs a lot.
What I'm hearing the future is you get a slab and you have like hand carved wood plates to go on the side and like where the grip is and other stuff.
I tried to do that. I tried to set up a slab that had CNC machined wooden stock and grip. But it just never came through. I could just never find anyone in the hobby that had a CNC router and wanted that at scale. And like I don't think that you can really like license that out.
The only person I think who's like worked with wood like that even could do something like that would be like Daniel Murray, and they mostly do that stuff for their own projects, from what I know. I don't. There aren't too many places that I know of people that do that.
Slug had a CNC router before he moved to Korea, and I was trying to get that to go, but then he moved to Korea.
I forget what it is that SFI has. I know it does the laser engravings, but it can do some other stuff.
Fancy magic.
Would you ever consider signing off on something like the Guardian links? Based on one of your designs?
I have signed off on stuff like that. Not from that company, but I have
but
signed
that
off on
kind of
CNC machined full blaster recreation.
Oh, which do they exist? Or wait, which ones? Am I just forgetting? And they exist?
I don't think they ever released, but like I gave the go ahead, gave the files, and they like made progress, and then they stopped messaging me.
I remember seeing like a video at one point of someone who had one, and then I didn't see
someone was
more.
working on a fully CNC machine slab for sale in the Chinese market.
That'd be sick.
Someone else was working on a metal version of the Cynthia. And all the Chinese shops also really like making like laser cut metal versions of plunger rods and catches and stuff like that, just as standard in their kits because it's so much cheaper over there. I tried to get some of them to send those individual components back to the US as upgrade kits. That also didn't happen. So,
all right, well, maybe someday. I mean,
nice.
the connection between those shops and the U.S. market and the European market is getting closer. Like that connection is growing and developing. So maybe a second attempt at one of these
we'll see.
Will result in something. Next up, Iron Gopher asks, Star Trek, Star Wars, or Stargate? Why?
I like Star Trek. Because Earl Grey tea tastes good. No, it doesn't. I lied. I don't like tea. I don't know. I think that I just like Star Trek more. I have never watched Stargate. I know what it is. I know of it. I just don't know it. I've never watched it. Never really cared to watch it. I don't really like that sort of genre of kind of raunchy, gritty sci-fi, I guess you could call it. But Star Wars, like Star Wars. But I just like Star Trek more. Star Trek is sort of like a warm blanket that you grew up with. You can just wrap it around yourself and always feel happy.
Now, I need to ask a question.
Star Trek is so good.
I need to ask a question that will go with this because Gopher and myself are both Trekkies, and as is some other people in the hobby, like that we know, like other friends, and KT. So the real question, and I know he's going to be pissed off if I don't ask this: which generation are we talking? Next generation? Not Deep Space Nine, not Voyager, not original.
I've watched all of them.
Okay.
Except for I've watched a bit of the original series, but I've watched all of them. Most of all of them, I should say. I really like the Next Generation. That's like the most comfortable one I'm with. That's my. I can watch it forever.
Take that, Gopher.
Just rewatching it always, and it'll be happy.
Take that, Gopher.
That's my favorite. But my second favorite Star Trek is Enterprise from the early 2000s. I really like Star Trek Enterprise. It's so good. I'm so sad that they canceled it.
I really agree that it's underrated. I think the fact that it got such a weak ending and some other aspects of it sort of like squashed it when it really could have been allowed to float more.
So good.
It was a good show. I don't like how much it sort of messed with. Star Trek's canon is very loose, but I don't entirely love the way that they mess with it necessarily. But it's just it's a great show, and it's very Star Trek.
Without spoilers, but yeah, it's a very good show. It has some rough patches, but I love it. And then probably the third one for me would be Deep Space Nine, but I've never really watched it full through the season. I've kind of watched
when I was young and watching it as it was actually coming out. Voyager was my favorite, but I've grown to and I watched DS9 and Voyager as they were running concurrently for the whole run, right? But like DS9 has grown on me a lot. Although I will always have a soft spot for Voyager, I think I recognize DS9 as the like superior show in big air quotes.
DS9 is the intellectual Star Trek, the thinking man Star Trek.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And like the modern day stuff.
I don't like I haven't watched Discovery, and
I have. I watched it all the way through on release.
I mean, I would like to at some point, but it's not for any of the like I hear a lot of like bad reasons that people don't like it, but I also hear some good reasons that people don't like it. I think
Mhm.
I don't know. I can't speak on like I haven't watched it. I have watched a lot of Brave New Worlds, and I like that show a lot.
I haven't watched that.
But I'm behind on it. I haven't caught up on it.
I think that Picard was kind of eh.
Picard
It was really fan
great
service-y.
fan service, but not really
Yeah.
much more than that.
Yeah. My father
that-
loved it, but
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of drivel.
I mean, like, you know, the same way that I love Voyager, but I recognize DS9 as the superior show. I loved watching Picard. I don't think it's a good show, but I really
Yes.
enjoyed watching it. Like, it was
kind of
so
made Picard
fun.
into like a prune of an old man. Is
Yeah.
very angry at everything and
Well,
get off my lawn. But he's
part
supposed
of
to be
that-
like the big proud man that, you know, takes everybody out of danger and tells them to stop being mean to each other.
I thought that was great, honestly. I enjoyed that aspect of the show. I really liked seeing a different development of Picard than you might expect, and people sort of like calling on him to be the Picard that they remember. And he's kind of like, I'm a different person now. But then you'd see these bits shine through of that character, and part of that is just Patrick Stewart is just incredible.
Yeah.
And like to
But also,
see
like-
him in the show and see him look so old and frail, and then
I
see
know
him
all
post-
the actors
and
are
then
so old now.
But then you see Patrick, and I mean Patrick Stewart's old, right? But then you see him on social media, and he's like, oh, he doesn't actually look that old. They just like they did extra makeup on him, and he's an incredible actor, and he looks
nice.
even older than he actually looks in real life. Anyway, I enjoyed watching Picard. I don't think it's a good show in quotes.
All right, tune in next week to This Week in Star Trek podcast. We are no longer a Nerf podcast. This is
Yeah.
Star Trek.
Well,
All Star Trek all the time.
So clearly, we have the answer to Gopher's question.
Yes.
Yes.
And for our last question, there is one other way that you can get to ask a question of our guests on this podcast, and that's by entering our raffle for our trivia game, which is coming
By
up right after this
bribing me
question.
directly.
That's also an option, I suppose.
With
You can just
direct
get on
cash.
here and be like, and just like blurt out the answer to a question someone paid you $40 for.
Exactly.
But the winner of our raffle last time, when we had Mike Lasik of Survival Fest on, is Froststorm from our Discord. And Froststorm's question, she asks, you have so many unique ideas for blasters and accessories. How do you find inspiration?
That's kind of hard to answer. Everywhere? I don't know. Like it kind of depends on what kind of inspiration. Like if it's inspiration for an aspect of a design, I can be walking through like a grocery store and see some weird foreign food and be like, oh, that's a good name for a blaster. I'll name it that. Like, you know, something like that. Relatively simple. Or like I can see a nice font that I like, go and see if it's free use and put that on the side of a blaster. But in terms of like inspiration for like aesthetic design, there's a lot of, you know, looking at video game stuff. So like I can just look up video game shotgun, be like, I like that. That doesn't look like a real firearm, and it looks cool, but also not overly greebled like a cosplay thing would be. Like it's actually 3D modelable and usable. Then sometimes if I plan to go super close to the reference material, I'll message the person to get permission. But other times it's just like, that looks neat. I'll use that as inspiration, kind of work off. But in terms of like blaster mechanic inspiration, it's a lot of kind of being friends with other designers and kind of talking to them, you know, just talking as friends and being like, hey, I'm working on this cool thing. Awesome. That's really cool. Let me kind of think about that for my own thing. Just today I was talking to Taffy about a new way to hold in rams, a ram base for like a town claw type setup.
I saw that, by the way. That's an easy way to do that. I liked it.
Neat things.
Yeah. I talk with Domochevsky quite regularly too about similar stuff and stuff that he's working on because I'm always just fascinated with his like crazy, contraptions and stuff that he's building because they're just so absurd. And I'm just like, I want to know more because that thing just looks. How did you get it to work?
Exactly.
Half the time, it's just fascinating. Yeah, talking to the designers,
and a lot of it is just kind of keeping tabs on the specialties of each person.
Yeah.
Like when I was working on Silly Shells, developmentally, I was talking to Domachevsky and to I can't remember if I reached out to GDOP about Spring Thunder Shells. I think that I did. Like towards the very beginning, like 2 years ago. But I was talking to Domachevsky and some other people about shell design, and then that kind of wrapped its way into the shells themselves as a design like philosophy. Also Rajar Sobek guy. Talked to him a bunch about shells. Yeah, inspiration from buddies and just talking to people. And then also keeping tabs on both designs that are old in the community and designs that were released by large companies. For example, if I'm looking for a new break action shell ejecting blaster, nudge wink wink, I look at something like the barrel break and I just stare at the internals for an hour of the barrel break, and I just try to figure out exactly how it works, how to improve upon it, and what the strengths are of that system, and try and use those best aspects of that in the blaster. Or I find something of a similar type, like kind of crappy break action shell ejecting things on Amazon that cost like $30. I bought one of those, take it apart, and kind of look at how it works. I think that works the same way as like a pellet gun air rifle with the break barrel and the kind of lever coming out from the bottom. But it's useful to see how people have adapted that to work for foam darts as opposed to steel pellets, or lead pellets. But stuff like that. And then keeping track of stuff that people in the community have designed. Both people that are currently in the community and people that have left it. I've talked to Adrian a few times about designs that he posted teasers for but never released, kind of abandoned. And those have led to my own concepts for new things. One of his things with a rival ball fed tube magazine thing that the tube goes into stock. And I said, that would work really well for Silly Shells. So I made a concept for that with his permission. And now that's one of my tube magazine blasters. Tube going into the stock towards your shoulder as opposed to out the front, like a Spring Thunder or Sobek.
So there's a lot of bouncing around of ideas and
everybody just kind of is in a big old stew pot of ideas. He kind of shares them with everybody else.
I love that.
One of the break action concepts I had was inspired by the Foam Knight RX, the break action single shot pistol with a geared prime. The prime thing. Just lots of things all over the place that are inspiring. Get inspiration from everywhere, but talking to people, knowing things kind of encyclopedically as well, and knowing how each blaster works, and
it drives. To go back to it. It really drives the idea of community blaster when you really think about it, because it is really such a collective idea of different community members or designs past, current, and things like that. It's such a nice
and I tried to make that easier for the next person along by releasing source files and all that stuff. But that kind of gets away from the main question. That kind of gets into general release philosophy as a designer. Do you go open source or closed source? Do you share everything, or
I think that's really relevant. Because like a lot of people are drawing inspiration from other people's designs, and that's good and like important. And like if you go down go through the printables pages of designers and look in the description text, they all have thanks to other designers and other people's stuff and references to other blasters, and like I borrowed this from this and I asked so and so to let me use this, and this was inspired by this, and I think that's really great. I think that's a really wonderful aspect of our
that's one of my
hobby.
One of my like proudest things as the designer that I've become is kind of like being the seed for other people's designs. Like so many people have made blasters based off of my work that are now their own thing, and that makes me happy. Someone made like a bolt action Mega XL blaster that shoots 200 FPS. But when I asked them about it, saying, "Oh, this is so cool! How did you make that work?" They said, "Oh, it's just a giant Cynthia scaled up and strengthened." And I was like, "Oh my god, that's awesome!"
That's wonderful.
Someone made a bullpup version of the slab recently, and it shoots like 8 million FPS, has a massive prime. That's super cool. That's also based off my own work. Just lots of really cool stuff that's kind of out there now. Oh, and also a lot of stuff that Chance has done. Like I can't think of any specifics, but some of the stuff that he's done has been from my work.
The first thing that comes to mind is like that scar that doesn't have any actual like twist on it that he did, or tracer.
Oh yeah, the 0 degrees.
Yeah.
Headlock, right, is what it was.
He used one of my scar collets, I think.
Yeah.
This stuff, that's one of them. And then also Wonder Boy made the Spirit brushless flywheeler. That is basically, he took a Cynthia and he chopped off the handle and strapped a battery and a flywheel setup. Kind of kept the aesthetics. And that's that blaster now. And actually, recently semi-recently, he came to me and said, hey, the trigger on this sucks. Can you switch it to the one that's used on Alchemist? And because Alchemist started out as a modification of Cynthia, Alchemist is basically pump action Cynthia, and then I threw out all the Cynthia parts and just made it pump action.
Right.
The grip is more or less similar-ish enough to kind of just splice onto the flywheel or make the grip a lot better. So now that's out there as a remix.
That's cool.
Everybody's just sharing everything and having a grand old time.
Well,
so
we have something to share with you that you may or may not have a grand old time with. We'll have to find out. We since the last time you were on this podcast, we unfortunately had to abandon the game that we played last time because we ran out of content with it. But now we play a hobby trivia game that's tailored to each guest. Okay. And if you're able to get 2 out of 3 of these multiple choice questions correct, you will win the opportunity for one of our listeners via a raffle held on our Discord to ask a question of our next podcast guest, which may or may not be Jangular. We're talking about maybe pushing that back another episode or something, but regardless, they get a free question as if they backed our Ko-Fi. And nice. I just ran the raffle and came up with Nathani as the winner of the raffle.
Perfect.
So I'll be.
This feels like Wait, Don't Tell Me on NPR.
I stole this game directly from Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Yeah. NPR is the best. All right.
I love that show.
I think he's the first one to directly like call that out too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said it the first time.
You said it like the first time. You said it the first time, but yeah, no one's like immediately caught on since.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Wait, Tell Me. Anyway, so, yes, tell me. Don't wait.
You've given the hobby the gift of silly shells, but today we're going to ask you questions about silly spells, specifically the intersection between Nerf and Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh God! Okay. I love this.
All right. Who wants to read a question first? Vile Grims.
I could go first, I guess.
Go for it.
Okay. So, which YouTube channel received millions of views for their videos playing out simplified Dungeons and Dragons combat using Nerf toys on a real-life grid between 2017 and 2019?
God.
It is multiple choice, so we're going to go down it real quick. So is it A, Aaron Esser, B, Make Test Battle, or C, Battle Universe?
Okay. I know that's probably not Make Test Battle because I was watching them diligently during that time period and seen that. I've never watched Aaron Esser. I've never heard of The Last Thing. As far as I know, Aaron Esser is kind of one of those like dude perfect gelled back hair kind of people, and he doesn't sound nerdy enough to do in D&D. I'm gonna go with whatever the last person you said is, and I don't even remember the name.
It was Battle Universe. It was C. So is C your final answer then?
Yes.
You would be correct.
Yes,
Yes,
good.
it is Battle Universe.
Weirdly enough, from what I remember, Aaron Esser is a gamer, because from what I remember back then, I think it was like big on Destiny and Overwatch at the time. Because I remember Drac recorded like going over and they played the game or something. I don't remember. Either way, yes, Battle Universe is the correct answer.
Perfect. Nailed it.
I'll be honest with you, I had not heard of Battle Universe either, but they have been making, or they were until they shut the channel down in 2020, I think. They were making these Nerf-based like challenge videos, and it was like they ran like a video studio, and it was like a side thing that they were doing, and it grew quite large, but they were all just like stock Nerf blasters, but like there's a lot of like funny, like creative, like game things. Honestly, the D&D one is like, I'd do that with my friends. Like that looks pretty fun. Like it's just instead of dice rolls, you're just actually shooting at somebody, but they can dodge it if they can stay in their square.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I recognize these people. Okay, I just looked it up.
Dex check right there makes you see if you can dodge it.
That sounds good.
Yeah. So it actually looks
brings
pretty
like
fun.
Aerobics into D&D.
Exactly.
You don't need to sit around and eat chips. You can get around and move.
All right. Well, so you're 1 for 3 already. You just need to get one more, but we'll ask you all 3 even if you get the next one. Which honestly, the next one, I think the next one's kind of a gimme, but that's okay.
Right, get the next one wrong. Got it.
All right, Grim, you want to go ahead and read this one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read it. Part of the 2021 Dragon Power line, the Nerf Ember Strike was a pump-action rotating cylinder blaster. How many elite darts were included with the Ember Strike? Was it A, 8 darts, B, 12, or C, 16 darts?
Okay, Ember Strike. Okay, I know of 3 blasters that were in the Dungeons and Dragons bow and arrow type thing, I think. There was a 4-dart cylinder blaster. Then there was a reskin of the Guardian crossbow. The Guardian crossbow is a 6-shot blaster, and that would be double the amount of darts in the package. And you said 12 was one of the options?
There is A, 8 darts, B, 12 darts, or C, 16 darts.
Okay. B, 12 darts. Final answer.
So that's, okay, that's your final answer. You would be incorrect. The answer is C,
18.
16 darts.
Or 16, yes.
I do believe it is similar to the Guardian crossbow, but I'm pretty sure it's like an 8-shot from what I recall.
Yeah.
No. What's the name of the blaster? Ember something?
Ember Strike. It was the pump action one.
Yeah, it's an 8-round cylinder pump action, and
the Ember Strike is one of the ones I still want to go and get at some point.
Oh, it does look like. Okay, so
yeah,
I was right, but it's not quite a Guardian crossbow.
It has dart storage in the stock. And so they actually gave you enough darts to load it fully and fill the storage.
Ah. Now I need to double check if the Guardian crossbow actually had 6 darts.
It did.
Okay.
It did.
So
I looked it up while you were talking about it.
All right.
All right.
So my logic failed me because Hasbro changed one thing when they reshelled it. Perfect.
If it makes you feel any better, if I wasn't familiar with it, I would have made the same mistake.
All right.
And your thought process was really interesting. To kind of go back and be like, okay, well, what design would this have been based on, and to logic it out based on that. Whereas my logic would have been, yeah, I did a review of that damn thing. I remember everything about it.
Yeah.
You know,
I used to have an encyclopedic knowledge of every blaster ever released before like 2018, and then past then I don't know anything that's come out in the last 5 years. Who knows?
It's not worth it. No. Okay, well, you're 1-1. I still have a chance to get this last one correct. You ready?
Yep.
Nerf's tie-in with the 2023 Dungeons & Dragons film Honor Among Thieves featured 2 melee toys, as well as 3 dart-firing blasters modeled after famous dragons from Dungeons & Dragons lore. Of these 3 dragons, which one was not actually encountered in person in any form by the main characters of the film?
Oh.
1, Themberchaud, the red one, in terms of the blaster. 2, Rakor, the green one. And 3, Palarindusk, the yellow one. And I want to admit here there's a little bit more original research that went into this question than I normally would include, but I'm extremely confident in the correct answer.
So the options are green, yellow, or red?
Correct.
Okay.
And if you want, we can discuss the descriptions of the blasters if you want. Like, that's not key to the.
Wait. So you're saying which one of those colors was not in the movie, or which one of those colors was not in Blaster?
In the film,
okay.
The 3 dragons that the blasters are based on, the main characters only interact in some form with 2 of those dragons.
Okay.
They do not encounter the other dragon.
Gotcha.
So which of the dragons do the main characters not encounter?
I watched this movie. Watched it once. I don't remember much about it.
In some form. I will be clear. The in some form, in any form, that is a key part of this question.
Okay. I don't think that they saw the yellow one.
So this
I don't want to spoil the movie.
This is where
I don't think that they saw
I think at this point, if anybody is like really worrying about spoilers for this, skip to the end of this question because we're gonna wind up
forward
talking
4
about
minutes or 5 minutes.
We're gonna wind up talking about some of the things that happen in the movie.
So, instant spoilers. They were in lava, and they fought a big red one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the final battle was a green one. Jason. I don't recall a yellow one at any point.
Okay.
You said in any form, though. So that could be like a drawing or some crap. But I don't think that they saw a yellow one.
I will tell you this. Every one of these dragons that they encountered in some form, they battled.
Okay.
That every encounter with a dragon was a fight.
Okay, I'm gonna go with no yellow.
So, okay. Here's where I'm gonna lead you. Do you remember where the green one is in the film? I'll give you a hint too.
I think it's towards the end.
Rakor the dragon, even though the blaster is green, it's a black dragon.
Oh.
The dragon character itself is a black dragon, but because Nerf doesn't make black blasters, they made the blaster kind of a teal green.
Oh. Huh. Okay. Wait. Okay. My brain.
You're good.
So there's 3 dragons.
Yep. You have correctly identified the red dragon in the film.
Okay, so there is a red one.
Right. And they do fight it, and you clearly remember that scene.
Yes. And the other 2 colors of dragons in the film itself are what?
So so the green blaster is based on a black dragon.
Okay. And then what about the other one?
I mean, the other one is the other blaster.
Okay. And is that correctly colored as the dragon in the movie?
I mean, at that point, I'm
too many
giving
hints.
It away.
Okay.
I'm just making sure that you have the correct like lore information.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the red one is in the movie.
Right. Do you know anything about these characters in D&D lore?
Not at all. I do play D&D. I have played it for like 4 years now.
But you know, they come up in like specific like pre-written campaigns and stuff. It's not.
Nope, nothing.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go with So you're saying that the green one, the green blaster, is black in the movie?
The green blaster is based on a black dragon in D&D lore.
Okay. Then I'm going to go with the yellow still, because I think that there was a blackish dragon in the.
But where was it in the movie? So we're at the point in the game where I'm just trying to make you win, so that we can get this person a question.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Do
just
you
like
remember,
wait, don't tell me.
Do you remember where that dragon appears in the film? The black dragon that the green blaster is based on.
I only. No. Let's go with that one then.
It's a very short scene. You are correct. It is B, Rakor.
Yes, got it all on my own. I'm so good.
First try.
Nailed it.
So, okay, here's the story.
Now walk me through this because my brain hurts.
I'm going to explain my original research because
also you evil man.
I had to do so much digging to try to come to a point where I was comfortable using this answer, because generally I try to make sure all the questions are based on things that are like Googleable, even if you have to like do some really deep Google digging.
Yep. People skipping the spoilers. Keep going. You're not there yet.
Yeah. Maybe I'll put a timestamp or something. You are correct about Themberchaud. Themberchaud and Grim, you know a lot about this too. Feel free to jump in. Themberchaud is an overweight red dragon who lives in, and he appears in like a different place in the movie than he is normally in lore, but they reference like, oh, he must have found a new lair or whatever. So,
yep.
You are correct about identifying that. They battle him, they get away.
We were discussing this in like the news discussion channel privately. I was like, yeah, for a lack of a better term, Thumberchod is just hard to miss.
You're all evil. Got it. You're colluding against me.
No.
Well, no.
We were trying to like streamline this question and make sure it was like good to put, because like the thing is both me and KT are like D&D guys. I've played not Forgotten Realms. What the setting? I've played the setting. I don't know why the term loses me. I
don't play as much, but my kid is very, very into it, and so I'm involved in it a lot.
I see. Yes.
So Rakor is often depicted. I think they picked green because Rakor, although it's a black dragon, like in terms of like the dragon like type, Rakor is often depicted with like green around it. So I think that's why they picked green. Rakor appears in one scene, and it's a flashback. Someone's telling a story, and they show Rakor attacking a bunch of it. He like spits acid and stuff.
Okay.
I think they used the green because it's like, I wasn't sure if it was like acid or if it was like necrotic, because either of those two are commonly described with green in D&D.
Yeah, Rakor has green in the wings and on the back, like fin of his neck. So
okay.
So here's where my original research comes in, and I'm very convinced that I'm correct on this.
This is so neurotic.
At the end of the movie, near the end of the movie, in the final battle, the villain casts a spell on a statue of a dragon, which comes to life and starts attacking the party. The statue has its color. So like Palarin Dusk is usually depicted as a gold dragon with little tinges of green along some of its scales. But of course, Palarin Dusk's is mainly known in the story as being such an ancient dragon that it's learned to use magic to extend its life by disappearing from the physical realm and only coming, like, retaking its physical form for brief moments to like defend the city that it's dedicated itself to defending. The original city that Palarin Dusk defended was Neverwinter. That is the city that battle is in. So it makes perfect sense that they would have a statue of Palarin Dusk in a younger form in that city.
That's what I assumed when I watched the film, that it was Palarin Dusk.
That's what I assumed too. And then I started looking.
Became alive?
And that's what became alive and attacked them. So they encountered a magic form of Palarin Dusk, a statue brought to life in the film, but they did not ever encounter Rakor. Now, I started looking to confirm my suspicions about Palarin Dusk because just watching it and having known about the three blasters, I always just assumed that was the case. But I couldn't. What I was looking for was like a piece of director's commentary or something where they said something
or
about
like
it.
a plaque under the statue, or
right,
anything.
exactly. And I went frame by frame through the scene. I could not find anything.
Of course, you did.
But then I remembered. Then I came up with the Neverwinter connection. And I am convinced, based on the Neverwinter
No,
connection,
I was also
correct.
convinced watching it. So I feel like a lot of people made that connection there. Also, I looked it up again to make sure I wasn't going crazy. It is the Forgotten Realms. I was right. That is the setting. That's the one I play a lot of.
You're the guy with the murder board with all the red twine between.
I 100%.
There are only like 2 dragons that are really associated with Neverwinter, from what I remember, and the other one I remember because I played Dragon Highest. Wait, I think that's Waterdeep. It's around the same area. Either way, the other one that's around that area, I forget the name, but he's like some golden dragon that begins with an A. You like have to steal gold away from this dragon. Yeah, sure, Aaron. We'll call him that.
Albert the dragon.
Something like that. But those were the only 2 that came to mind in the surrounding area. So that's why I was just like, oh, that has to be Paladin Dusk.
Well, it's a little bit tortured, but we got there. Nathani,
the third question is always the hardest one, anyways. It's supposed to be the difficult one.
It's not a Nerf podcast anymore. It's also not a Star Trek podcast anymore. No, it's D&D.
Of the list of things that we could go on and on about, I believe it's like currently Star Trek, Destiny, Marathon, and I guess now
all of these things except for Marathon have Nerf tie-ins.
Yeah,
so
we could also do Halo ad nauseum. There's a lot of.
Well, Marathon is just Halo but older,
and
Destiny is also Halo, just newer technically. If we want to get into the nitty
gritty. So, Nathani, I'll be in touch about your question. It's always a little bit awkward because like. I want to wait until people have had a couple days to listen to the podcast and discover on their own that they won the raffle.
Right.
But then I forget and I wind up contacting them like a day before or something because I just lose track. I need to like set a reminder. I need to just set a reminder or something, I guess.
Okay, I found the dragon. It's Aranax, and the reason I was confused is because both dragons in human form wield the magical staff that they were given, and that's why I was getting confused. Okay, but.
Well, I'm glad that's settled. All right. Well, Sillybutts, thanks for being a good sport. Thanks for playing along.
I didn't need any help. I'm so good.
The litmus test is always how Beret feels about how it went.
Oh yeah,
because he's the one that had the
we need to have him on for round 2 at some point.
Well, you know what I really want to do is have him on like Not Enough as a guest host. So that he gets to read a question with somebody else.
Yeah, I see.
That's the goal. So at some point we'll have that happen. But speaking of torture, we need to spend a minute, I think, yet again for like the 3rd or 4th podcast episode in a row, talking about the N1 dart.
I love the N1 dart.
What? I mean, okay, so it's
I heard that
tough
KT really wants to talk about it a whole lot.
Oh, I'm so
like
excited.
A lot. He asked me
so
specifically to bring all of my N1 darts.
I don't want to talk too much smack because I know that it is a really relevant topic right now. I am getting a little tired of the dart just being shot down when so few people even have them in hand yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because it's like in the same way that I don't believe you can like separate the art from the artist. I don't think you can truly separate the mechanics of the dart from the reason that Hasbro is choosing to change their standard and make a new dart. But they are separate conversations. And so you can
So which one do you want to have?
Well, in this particular case, I think I really do want to lean into the We've talked a lot about the business side of it already on this podcast. We've already talked a lot about business is going to business. Like their goal is to make money. This makes sense as a money-making move. And you
make a dart that the other people can't use. And it put a thingy on it that you've patented.
Right.
Sell them.
And it's valid.
That's all that needs to be said.
It's valid.
If you want to know more, go back to another podcast.
I don't like that. I'm not going to defend corporations, but they are making these things by the millions. They are going to be available to us. And so what I want to talk about today is more the designer side. I mean, we're here with Sillybutts, so like I feel like we should be talking about that. Like, what do you see in this new physical object, this new dart that we have access to? What do you think are the possibilities with it? Vile's been doing a lot of work with them as well, and I just kind of want to hear thoughts on what its potential might be, what might be interesting to explore with it, where it might fit into our ecosystem in terms of its actual properties.
Sure. I have 5 of them. I got them before release from an undisclosed source. So I have 5. And I've been kind of handling them and, messing around with them without a blaster to use them in. I made a silly shell for them. They work fine out of that. It's it's a dart. It works in a shell. It's good. It seems like a pretty good dart. Like, just looking at it mechanically, like as the physical good, it looks good in terms of quality and material choice and shape and design and weight. I like it. I think that I like it. It's a dart. I think that in terms of like people using it in the community, I think that I don't see it being like the way that Ultra has been used, where Ultra is kind of, the darts themselves have kind of not been used by people, and the blasters are just converted to existing dart standards. I think that there's going to be some of that in this new type of dart, but given that it's been working, from what I've seen from people like firing them and sharing their thoughts, is it true that they seem to be performing better than elite darts out of elite blasters? Like accuracy wise and range wise?
I think like the consensus was like better than elites, worse than waffles. If modded, make them halves, basically.
I see. So I was thinking that like maybe the use of this could be like a very niche use case of fields of play where they require you to never have taken out the screws of your blaster, like no modification at all. Bone stock blasters. If they perform better than elite, then maybe they could be good for that in terms of like community usage. For like Jimmy, the little boy, he doesn't care if it shoots a little bit different than the other ones. It's a Nerf blaster. It'll shoot a dart good. It's good.
Wow, is Jimmy related to Timmy? Because we always hear about little Timmy whenever anyone's talking about like a toy.
Yeah.
No, he goes to a different school. You wouldn't know him.
Oh, okay.
But I think that these darts could have a use for that. But I don't know.
I could add to that, actually.
That's all I can really think of.
So when it comes
like
to
the technology
playstyle,
of the dart seems interesting. I like the new head and stuff.
Yeah, so here's my thing on playstyle. Scavenger builds. If everybody's running half darts or full lengths, if you're running N1s, they can't scavenge your darts.
Well, but you also can't
Right.
scavenge
You also
theirs.
can't scavenge
Exactly.
theirs. True.
It's a
but
double-sided sword.
But you see what I mean, though? That prevents scavenging builds like out of a lot of things, because if there are two types of darts, even if you go, because like if you're running full lengths and half lengths, a lot of times those will still work in most blasters, especially if they're like front loads or whatever. Like if you're running just stock blasters, all you have to do is like cut out the dart post and, oh, look, I can run half lengths, whatever, not a big deal. But you can actually get rid of scavenging altogether with that, because if you're on two different sides of a game, that really does prevent it. If they're very similar in performance, that actually means that it's not that far off with who's running which one. I think that would be an interesting way.
Yeah,
to
until
Ultra and
everybody
Mega,
everybody's running silly shells and you just carry them.
Yeah, exactly.
You just got the right shells. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about
just have
Ultra and Mega for that? Like, couldn't you complete the same thing with existing standards? And those are more available and probably shoot further. Well, I don't know about Ultra, but Mega probably.
Mega. Well, the only thing is, like usually there's an FPS cap for Mega that's lower, so that obviously is going to
I
change.
see.
That's a big, because like I saw that at the HVZ stuff. Like I know certain things like, oh, you can't get Mega above 90 or something like that. I know with most clubs or HVZ events, from what I could tell. And then, obviously they might be running 130 for everything else, but once you get into the larger stuff, which also
I just realized that people are going to have separate FPS caps for different silly shells and different blasters.
That is true.
Oh, that sucks. I hadn't thought about that until now.
There are a couple of little things depending on the game. It obviously
you need to zip tie your shell to label it as for the FPS.
Oh God, are you gonna have to put a little hole in there just for the zip tie on the shell? Oh God, that suck.
No, I don't think that's actually going to be an issue.
I don't think it's actually going to bump into that, but that's a fun thought. It reminds me though of the Paper Skeletons 3D thing that just came out, which is like an outboard battery holder that has its own PWM on it, and he designed it in a way that you can take it to an event and you set the control and you FPS check it, and when they're happy with it, they can zip tie it closed, so you can't adjust the thing without cutting the zip tie.
Smart.
And he took it to Maryland Mayhem, and they saw it and they were like, "Oh, this is great! I love this." They were like really excited about it.
Yep. That's really smart. I like quite a bit. Yeah. What were we talking about? N1 darts?
N1 dart.
So I've actually been doing a lot of testing.
They're darts.
I've been doing a lot of testing with them personally.
All right.
So I was working with or talking a lot with Dead Man's Foam, who converted a Nexus Pro to fire N1 darts, and he was struggling. The more power that gets put behind these darts, they have a really bad problem of veering upwards, and I have confirmed it. It's like Rival. This is the best way to describe it. It's like putting backspin on a Rival. With the higher you go,
just upwards, or is it like fishtailing like Elite Dart?
It does go upwards. It's really strange, because I noticed it as well. I was like, it does curve more upwards. It does sometimes veer to the left or the right, but it is always in an upwards trajectory, which was strange. The only thing I could even imagine was the weight distribution of the plug, because you're putting weight on the back end. So is that doing like an airfoil where it's like pulling it up? I don't know. I really want to see it in slow-mo, because I want to see like what's actually happening to the dart to cause it to do this.
It could be weight bounce thing. It could also just be the shape of the dart, I guess.
Well, I
wonder if the broad head had this wider diameter. Like, it's not as pointy as an Elite Dart. Even if the head was the same like diameter, it's not as pointy. I wonder if like the tip at the back is causing, in conjunction with that, kind of like wonky airflow.
Well, it could be the wonky airflow. It could be the plug itself is slightly cut awkward, or maybe the weight of the glue. Because once you put the glue in there, right, like it's not always going to be perfectly balanced all the way around that, because it's a cylinder.
I wonder if there's also an aspect of there not being a hole in the back.
No, they
Elite
put
darts
a hole.
all have holes in the back.
No, they put a hole in the N1 darts now because of venting.
Right. But I mean like a big hole.
Oh, the bigger hole. Yeah.
Proper effect on.
If you want to know
stuff,
here's what I suggested. I reached out to Deadman, and he was talking about his problem. I said, cut off that back end where the DRM plug is. He found that 45 millimeters from the front of the dart all the way back puts the cut directly in front of where the glue and that DRM plug is located. I've now created a jig. I now have an N1 dart cutter. You could just download. I've now got a printables page. You could did it. Shameless plug.
Sweet. Let me go follow that.
But I put that out, and when you cut it, it roughly comes out to 45. I think the longest I got was like 45.1 millimeters. But either way, it came out right in front of the DRM plug. When I was just cutting them by hand, I had problems with the accuracy, because again, the cut's not straight. So it could veer left or right or do something weird, obviously based on how it was cut. When I put it through the cutter, I was actually really surprised at how accurate it was. Because I modified an agility, it hits roughly in the 130s. And at about 30 feet, that thing is actually surprisingly accurate. I have one of those little Rival targets with the bell on it or whatever.
Yeah.
And at about 30 feet, if I wasn't hitting the target, I was grazing it. repeatedly, and I was just like, this is actually surprisingly accurate. So I've done.
Is half N1 good?
So the one thing I found was it's when you cut that off, the darts equal out to about 1 gram each. It basically turns them into the same weight as a standard worker dart. And so they're slightly longer than the worker darts. Obviously, at 45, they're longer. They're slightly wider because obviously wider diameter, but with power put behind them,
wider also, airflow path.
Yeah, it actually does quite well because the weight is now all distributed to the front, and there's not like some weird offset to the back with that foam or whatever. Whether it's like you said, the hole on the back, maybe that's interfering with it on how it's traveling. No idea, but it absolutely does way better. And same thing when Dead Man's Foam tried it in his converted Nexus. Same thing. He was like, it is definitely much more accurate once I cut that off. He's already designed a scar. I actually need to try to print it out because he was using it on an aluminum barrel, and I actually am going to try to convert it over to work on 1932 brass because that actually works. These fit into brass. It's a little bit of a tighter fit, but you could also go with standard 16 millimeter aluminum with 15 millimeter inner diameter. It's a little bit obviously of a looser fit, but both do work. And so yeah, we're doing a little bit of research behind that because I was the same. I was like, if this had a scar on it, I wonder how this would actually perform because it's already
a B-car on it.
Yeah, we could put a B-car. We just did a standard printed scar first just to test it because if the concept is there and it works, I'm like, okay, this dart's doing way better than any other thing that was really offered through Elite or of the Elite line for so long. Even the AccuStrike line, because you couldn't breech load those, but you can actually breech load these because the heads are slightly smaller than the foam. So there's a lot of stuff going into it. That's why I'm more fascinated in the aspects behind. I'm not going to get caught up in people's arguments about this or that. I'm fascinated behind how does it work? Is it better? Can we make it better? What standard stuff? The one thing I found funny about all of the blasters, and I have currently the Agility, the Ward, the Pinpoint, and the Infinite. I literally got them all because after I grabbed the Ward for $5, right? It was like whatever, and then I grabbed the Infinite, and I can just went in and did a simple spring swap and some standard. Like again, I made the joke of we're modding like it's 2014, swapping a spring out, cutting the AR, and plug up the speed holes out of the plunger tube. And these things, the Infinite, I hit 190s in my first testing, and I was like, how the hell on K25
190?
No barrel swap, no dart like swap,
no barrel
standard
swap,
in
no
one
nothing.
Dart.
Standard. So it was a standard in ones. I was getting 170s. When I did the cut downs, I was getting 190s on my original testing. I actually had a photo of 187, and when I kept taking the blaster apart for the video, because I did a mod video to show people like, hey, this thing's actually kind of legit. My numbers dropped like 10 to 15. And I was like, well, that sucks because I was really like going to showcase how cool this was. But that could have been just sealing issues, some lubrication problems, again, be handling it multiple times.
You also literally only, as far as the speed holes went, just quick and dirty covered it up with like
it was dirty.
It was just E-tape.
it was electric tape, a K25 spring, and I knocked out the air restrictor so that way I could use the cut downs. And it was just performing.
This was like the minimum effort put in.
The most minimum effort you could imagine. And Hawkeye has already created a half dart conversion. I was talking with Hawkeye quite a bit because he was like, how did you do the mod? And I was like, oh, literally, this is it, man. Just do this. And he was getting on half darts in the 170s as well. Just with the simple thing of a spring swap and plugging up the holes. Like, it was not a problem. And the one thing I have been very surprised with on the whole brand is how well engineered all of these blasters actually are. And they are just internally, they're very similar to Rival because,
that's what I was noticing that when I saw internal photos. I don't actually have any in hand yet, but I was realizing that like all of them are really good, like looking internally.
Yes.
Like the Infinite reminds me of like a Game Face Tryon in some ways.
I think like some of the Nerfball people worked on it because I think someone had said that they thought Phil worked on it, and then I know Nick Harari confirmed that they worked on the project, and both of them were in the Strife X project. So I'm assuming that's kind of like
Nice.
a potential push for, hey, let's build these a little nicer on the inside if we can.
Well,
I like it better than Elite 2.0, which I never bought any of.
Yeah, I'm kind of I got a Moto Blitz, I think, was like the only real one I got. But the one thing that we all the stuff that we've talked about between the news, between the stuff that I've seen, Luke put out a video on the Out of Darts channel when he went there to the HQ, and he said that they were using a modified Chronos to test these darts. And when I heard that,
I heard that, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Now looking internally at how close these are, because they take K25s like a champ in most of them. If they don't, the agility, I literally just went and grabbed the best rival spring I had laying in the parts bin and threw it in there and got 130s. No problem. And that's all I had to do. I just had to grab a rival spring and it fits perfectly. There is a lot of really cool engineering and stuff behind it. And yes, they have taken cost-cutting measures. Like that is a very, very clear sign. When we discussed about how, I don't remember which representative it was that was saying that they were going to try to cut costs throughout the whole manufacturing process to try to do that. The one thing that I noticed is, yes, the plastic is thinner, but they've gone for slightly different types of plastic. You can tell that it's like a polyethylene or a like polypropylene type of plastic. So it's a little bit, it's going to be more
like acetylene.
Yeah. Well, it's the plunger tubes are made out of that for sure. But the like shell, some of the shells are multi-parts. So they clip together, which means that their molds are going to be smaller. So like if you look at a long shot, like a old school long shot, that shell is quite large and it's massive. It's just one piece. When you reduce the size, that's cost cutting. But it made for a really strong shell because when these things are overlapping and they're clipped together, now that actually means that the shell is thicker. But when you look on the internals, people, Hawkeye, I saw did a little live stream going into the internals of the Infinite and said, I'm a little bit worried about the back cap because all of the plunger tubes have a cap on them. Like most of them are clipped. The ward is screwed in, but everybody Hawkeye said, I'm a bit worried about the spring going against these clips. It's putting a lot of pressure. And one thing he didn't notice was, and I want to say is, it's actually not all of the spring forces being put directly on that back cap in the clips. All these plunger tubes, almost all of them, move backwards into a cradle that is in the shell, where the shell is actually bracing it while it's priming.
Nice.
So not only is the back cap already there, now it goes to a braced actual inner ribbing that is, just braced up in all places while it's catching. And then it moves forward, and obviously the clips just have to hold the spring already in its compressed state, which is easier on it than actually having to do the full compression, and all that. And I was like, nobody's noticing all this engineering that went into it. This stuff is actually really nicely designed because, I do get it. Like, having to swap over to a new dart type, that sucks. That sucks for groups. That sucks for people who might be really invested in a particular dart. That sucks for game styles or, bringing that in. That does make it difficult. But when you see how easy it is to mod and converting it to whatever you want, whether it's half darts, whether it's mega, because it's clearly going to love to hit those megas like they're nothing. If it's a rival,
yeah,
I love converting rival blasters to mega. This is now my new mega standard. I'm going to go to these every time because I'm like, oh, this is going to be great mega blasters. I'm so excited. And it was weird because
convert
people
them to use shells.
Yeah, or shells. Yeah, you could throw shells in it. But I loved it because I love these blasters. I hate to say it, I love these blasters, but they're so nice. And there was so much hate for the new dart that the blasters kind of unfortunately got tossed to the side. Yeah, and that was a bit of a shame because they're actually really good when you look at how they were manufactured and how they were engineered and some of the cool little aspects to them. Like, there's just really interesting stuff. Even the fact that the triggers are at a 12.5 degree angle. They're not straight. So they even designed the triggers at a 12.5, and I measured it at roughly around 12.5 degrees for each and every one of them. And I was like, that's interesting for ergonomics. Putting them at a slight tilt down. And I was like, this is just fascinating. I've never seen it. And even the Infinite, everybody's like, it doesn't have slam fire. Remove one lock and it does. There is a lot of really fun things.
Remember, there's the reason that they took Slamfire out was because of a noise restriction in the EU. So it makes sense that the functionality was in there, and they just had to block it
I
out.
love it when like the engineers do that sort of thing. I can't think of any specific examples that I've ever come across, but like constantly, whenever you're taking apart some blasters, you just go in there and you're like, this was made for me.
The knockout,
do something around. So
I would say the breach of the knockout, the fact that the track actually, all you have to do is clip out 2 things and the track continues on just enough to open the breach fully. Something like that. There are these fascinating little things that just seem to be like Easter eggs for us. Because why bother machining in that extra track? Why bother injection molding that track in there if you don't need to? But it's still in there. And why was the breach so large, even though you only needed half of it for a rival ball? Like, it's unnecessary, but it's there are such fun little things that we can find, especially if you like modding. I love modding. That's where I get my most enjoyment from, is tinkering and making it do something weird or different. So yeah, I can talk about it for a very long time, but I keep working. I'm currently rebarreling the Ward actually to be take different ammo types, and I'm trying to extend the air restrictors on them, so that way cut down N1 darts could even work on it, because that was the biggest problem. The DRM plugs prevent you from using those multi-dart air restrictor systems.
You could probably 3D print new air restrictors. Like, how do you install them?
So I actually found, because it's solvent welded, I've created extension caps that literally just go right over the top of the piece.
Oh.
And you can clip out. The funniest thing is you can clip out the little holder, because usually with air restrictors, they were small enough that if you started to clip around the little pieces that held the prongs and stuff in, it actually sometimes they would pop out even then because they're just the right size. It actually was holding it. These aren't. The discs for the air restrictors actually extend out really far, and if you clip that entire cage out, now you just have that thing sticking out, and you just need to extend it a little bit further, and you're done. And I did some initial testing without gluing anything, and I launched the cap out of the back with the dart, and it got 76 FPS. even though I had nothing glued up, I just literally clipped the barrels into the system, and I put that little cap on the back where it was just barely clipped in on its own because of tolerancing, and then I shoved a dart in there and fired it, and I still got 76.
I hope that like some engineers for these like big toy companies, like they see people doing mods for them. They're like, yes, they saw the hidden message. Yay!
Yeah,
I finally got it. I hope. Of course, there's no way that anyone will ever, reach out and say, hey, I put that there for you, because, you don't do that if you're working for a big company like that. But
yeah,
man, I hope that they get some validation from seeing people figure out these hidden things. Like, yay!
One can hope.
I'm just pleasantly surprised with a lot of it. I back when this was all still leaks, I was I was still more hopeful than I feel like a lot of other people were, but I was still very kind of like ready for it to be another Ultra. And I remember on the podcast I had said like a couple episodes ago before launch, I was like, worst comes to worst, we'll all live. We don't use the stock blasters anyways. And I assure you, someone will convert all of these blasters to shoot half darts. But now I'm kind of like pleasantly surprised, because like it's like I kind of thought of this, and I think me and you would have a different perspective because we've been in the hobby a little longer. I kind of thought back to when Elite was like the new thing and other stuff, and I'm just kind of like, we've had this platform for about, give or take, almost 20 years now, right? So we've had a lot of progression, and so that's why we have such a fine-tuned dart. But even up until recent memory for me, we didn't have darts at the store you could go buy and cut in half and it be a sufficient dart to shoot accurately out of the box. We didn't have those until Waffles from Dart Zone.
Foam backer rod, man.
Yeah, you had to make them yourself, exactly.
BBs and hot glue.
And then even then it was E-kind.
The community has a lot of like a sense of ownership over the half dart, which is fair considering that it was birthed from the Stefan, which was a community creation. But you will never truly get a new ammo standard without a large company because they are the only ones that can mass produce them.
Exactly.
Some of us probably remember the attempt to mass produce for someone in the hobby to produce extra Boomco when they stopped making it. That never got off the ground. It's just too hard to make it in the quantity that allows for mass adoption. So we're always going to get and even the half dart, it was developed based on the Stefan, but it came down from companies, right? Like it's not like ultimately the reason that it has the ubiquity that it has now is because you can go to Walmart and buy them off the shelf or order boxes of workers from out of darts even.
Well, definitely stuff like workers and jet darts, stuff like that were before that kind of Walmart, in person.
Yeah. But even still,
yes, I agree generally.
You need them for mass production. You need a worker at the very least.
Like I didn't even full swap the half darts until like late 2022, and that's later than most hobbyists, but like we didn't have most of these off the shelf options until more recent memory, like post pandemic. And I know we had a lot of people come in here and during that time, and that's all they remember, but like this is the culmination of a lot of time making it work. We are essentially denying the possibility of a platform similar to our Mega or Mega XL that we openly accepted almost immediately. And even Rival, and Rival isn't even accurate. Rival has the advantage of course, high capacity and like all the other stuff. So I get why it was adopted, but like we're shunning this because we're kind of jaded before we've even given it the chance to be good. And we're already seeing indications that it could be good. And even off the shelf, it's like pretty half okay as long as you put it in a jig and cut off the backs, like right out the rip. And that's something we haven't really had. And so I'm just like, we should give it a shot.
I agree. Now, the question then becomes, how many Chinese companies do you think are currently, as we are speaking, CNC milling out some brand new foam molding?
Oh, absolutely.
For these things.
Most definitely.
Just crank them out. Who cares about that little dart peg patent? I don't give a crap. Let's just churn those babies
probably
out.
Within 3 months, you'll see him up on Amazon.
Yeah, cue the Bobo Lolo video of him just being showered in darts.
Oh,
just
absolutely.
that, but they're all orange.
Grimm's mentioned time, and that's something that we don't have a lot of left. We're hitting the 2-hour mark, and so it's time to call it on this one. But we also talked about a lot of different ammo types, and so I want to close with a little quick surprise question for everybody. I want to know for each of us sitting here, because I know I'm not the only one sitting at my desk playing with random ammo that's sitting on my table. What types of ammo do you have sitting on your desk in front of you right now?
Oh, good.
Oh, so this is a little embarrassing. I have 0 darts, and that's because my desk used to be absolutely always covered with stuff I'm working on, but at the start of this year, after the whole last year of FNC development, when we were working on the show, I redid my desk setup. It uses a lot warmer tones. I have like a monitor lamp. I have it very clean. The whole goal is to keep my mental spirits up and to keep an efficient workspace that makes me happy and productive while working at it. So I don't have any like distractions like that on my desk. The closest thing to a distraction might be like my phone, which is on a phone stand, so I can see if an important text comes through. But like it's a fairly cleaned off desk setup.
Sounds nice. Must be nice.
Good.
It used to be half darts though, were the thing I constantly had on hand. Usually ones that were like some random e-kind waffle that I had like cut back in the day that I still had old ones of on my desk to plink around for fun.
Yeah.
All right, Silly, what you got?
Everything. On my desk, I currently have a sticky dart, a Tagger head Mega XL, half Mega XL to fit inside of Silly Shells, half Mega, a giant 3D printed bamboo dart, N series, Rival, Ultra Elite, a streamlined dart. What else do I have? On the shelf behind me, I have Supermax darts, if that counts. I have more 3D printed giant darts, because that's an upcoming file release of dart-shaped storage containers. I have ballistic balls on my desk.
Green or yellow?
Ooh.
Both. I have green and yellow. Some of them might actually be super max balls. I have Vortex on my desk. Everything. Let's go with everything instead of me trying to figure out everything else.
All right, Vile,
and silly shells.
No, Vile. Are these alleged good half N series darts in the room with us right now?
All right, so here's my problem. I have 2 desks, and currently most of the darts that were on one desk have been moved to the other one because that's the work bench, usually where I do recording and actually work on stuff. So which one am I including here?
Both. I would say both, considering your setup is very different than everyone else's.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yes.
So, like Silly, let's get into this. 50 cal balls. I have Hyper, Boomco, Half Mega,
I have
Ultra.
Hyper too.
Yeah, full-length waffles, half darts, worker cut waffles, Game Face, Tryon darts, Bamboo 1.0 from Dart Zone, Rival, both non-Acu Rival, and the other one, Vortex, Full Mega.
What color of Vortex?
2 different ones, actually. I have the one that's a darker green and one that's more of like the blue center with the outer green.
The lime-ish one.
Yeah, I have both of those, and then I have a demolition rocket. I don't actually have an XL over here right now, which is kind of surprising. And then all of the cut down N1 darts that I've been making, because my cutter is right here, and non-cut down.
Nice.
All right. I think that's everything. Yeah.
I forgot. I also have Hyper, a Busby missile from the last.
That's in the storage. I have a storage. There's a door right next to my desk, and then I literally have like 8 drawers high of those plastic Sterilite drawer bins, and it's just filled with everything.
I oddly have no half darts on my desk. I have half darts in the storage bin behind me. I don't have half darts on my desk.
So I have, my workspace for computer stuff is separate from my workspace from Nerf stuff. So not too much makes it up here, but if I'm just like playing with something, like my Tulip is here because I've just been like handling it a lot and like I put a scope on it and stuff. And my one N series blaster, my Ward is up here. So I have a single classic Mega Dart, a single Chili Dart, a single N1 dart, a single green ballistic ball, and then I have one Adventure Force waffle, but I cut like a half an inch off the back of it because people were doing that joke in the memes channel about adding dart DRM to every dart. And so I took the green ballistic ball and I cut the little bit off the waffle dart and I held them together to make it look like a ballistic ball with dart DRM.
Perfect. That's so good. All the single darts. All the single.
Yeah, exactly.
I only have one of everything.
Well, yeah. Actually, and there's a single half dart under the desk. I just noticed, which was just probably from shooting Tulip and not cleaning up. So yeah, we definitely have the full spectrum here. I think of dart litter, but
Taste the dart rainbow.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But I think that's it for now. Listeners, let us know in the comments what darts you have in your desk, I guess. And what you thought of this whole conversation. Sillybutts, let the folks know where they can find you, please.
All right. Hello, everybody. I have lots of social medias and file sharing and crap, and it's all under
You have a great website now. I was just looking at it that points to everything.
I do, yes. Stuff by Silly, StuffBySilly.com. And that has a little tab at the top called Links to My Other Stuff. And that has links to my printables page where I release files, my GitHub where I used to release files. Now I've moved to printables because it's better. YouTube, Reddit, Discord tag, and my donation things as well. But yeah, it's all there now. And if you generally want to, see stuff that I'm working on, YouTube, #1 place to see work in progress stuff. Reddit is the second best place to see it. I post work in progress prototypes and CAD models and designs and stuff like that as I'm working on them.
Yeah.
And and if you ever need to, reach out to me, or if you want to, discuss something, I don't have tons of time these days as I'm trying to find a job and stuff, but I do have a Discord username, Sillybutts, as you would expect. And yeah, you can talk to me about nerf and stuff. Yeah, that's it.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming on again, for braving our trivia game, and for having a great chat with us about such a variety of things.
How long until you have me on for my third time?
I don't know. How long was it since the last time?
I don't know. I think it's been like 6 months.
It was like
so,
it was a
yeah.
long time. I think you were all the way back in like, what was it, episode
It was pretty early.
9 is 7. No, that's way too early.
You were like the second guest, I think. I think it was Taffy, and then
I think it was Taffy, and then it was Silly,
wow.
I want to say.
Right.
But there was a gap, because at the time guests was not like a regular thing. Now it's like every episode has a guest.
Oh, Maritime was guest number 2.
Oh, yeah.
Then wait, okay, we're getting our timeline messed up. It looks like it's Taffy, Maritime, Not Enough.
Oh.
Then WF8. Then when was, maybe I missed.
I'm just not there at all.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was all figment of our imagination.
Okay, so it was a lot less
Mandela
soon than I
effect.
thought. It was episode 23, which was 7 months ago.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was all the way back in November.
Okay.
All of this just bleeds
this
together
is one of
for
the
us.
things. This is one of the things that kind of throws things off too, because we only do everything every other week. I say
Right.
only. It feels like we're constantly working on the show. I'm so glad we did it every other week, because I could not imagine doing.
I have set it
Yeah.
in my brain to where I have a system. After production week is over, I literally forget about the show for a week. I forget that it is
Totally.
a thing, and then my brain automatically remembers the week of, so that way I can just kind
Yep.
of relax.
Yeah, it's
Perfect.
good.
Yeah, gotta go for a third. Oh, baby, a triple.
We'll definitely get you back on at some point.
Hey.
But for now, Grim and Vile, what's going on?
I'm probably doing something on Twitch right now, and I'm trying to actually put YouTube videos out on my channel again. Weird.
Whoa, crazy!
And a printables
talk.
page.
No
I got so much
way.
going on.
That's
While we were
wild.
recording the episode, I went and thing that.
Hell yeah.
The Vile stream is the show release hangout. Definitely pop in and say what's up after you watch the show on Friday, which is too late. That already happened. But if it's Saturday and you're listening to it on podcast service, Vile should be on right now.
It's true.
Yep.
Very true.
Grim, you just trying to stay cool?
I'm just trying to stay cool. I think we're gonna keep up the trend of I'm doing a whole lot of nothing, and it'll be a very momentous occasion when I do finally say something at the end of the podcast.
Hell yeah. Can't wait. My band's album is out. I think did I mention that in the last episode? I'm not sure.
I don't remember.
I teased it a couple times. Oh no, you know what? It's in the link in the last episode, but I'm gonna put it in this one too.
Okay.
We're real proud of it. I say album. It's an EP. It's 3 tracks, but
I mean, it's already tangentially related, anyways. All the music that plays in every episode is your music. So
people ask, so I'm just gonna talk about it. Like
oh no, absolutely.
You know, I'm proud of it. I feel like
you do good
it's a
work.
good few tracks. So check it out. Let me know what you think. And with that, we have to go make the show because we haven't recorded anything. So bye.
I got to sit here and
Bye-bye.
distract them.
Yeah.
God. Yeah, I bet.